Good afternoon, viewers and listeners out there. We are at the Steam House in the Birmingham City University, BCU, and I'm absolutely delighted and excited for you all to meet Elliot Parnham from Skyfarer, who is the founder of his company. And today we're going to ask lots of questions about what it is that Elliot does and how he got into it. And I'd just like to hand over to you now and just welcome you. Thank you for coming in today. And I know you're really busy right now.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, what is Skyfarer? What does it do? And who are you in the scheme of things for that business?
So Skyfarer essentially is a drone operator. So we know how to use drones, complex drones. So this goes beyond your conventional little quadcopters, your sort of DJIs off the shelf. It goes on to big logistics drones or surveillance inspection drones for long range operations. So our focus is how do we use this amazing tech in society to benefit society at scale? And our vision is really to have networks of drones providing services in society routinely for the benefit of society.
Wow. Where do we go with that? Because there are many angles. So right now, how long has Skyfarer been operating?
So I started this back in 2017. So that was at the end of my undergraduate degree in Aerospace Engineering at Coventry University. At the back end of that, I did what was called the IMechE UAS Challenge. It was the Institute of Mechanical Engineers drone challenge, essentially, where I had to build a drone and do some autonomous missions. And that's kind of where the idea came from, along with some, deep thinking that came along with my final year after pivoting kind of my life's direction up to that point, really.
And did you get any help as soon as you'd finished that? Was it a degree? Was it a diploma? Yep. It was a degree.
Yeah.
Once you'd finished that degree, the journey then into business with this idea that you'd got, was that simple because you'd got the purpose and the passion?
The purpose and passion is absolutely fundamental. And it was almost, not to go too deep here, but it was almost as if in the conventional society, in a conventional job, I almost felt like I was drowning. So it's almost like I had to go into doing something. I was working for myself. I was doing something innovative with no strings attached. So it was kind of like boom or bust for me. There was no decision at that point. It was, I know I need to do this. I will do it. And it's either going to be a success or it's going to be a failure. But at least I know I've done it. And I got myself to that point. And I'd also found out that it's not something that I can do alone. Like this vision that I had right from the start, it was such a big, ambitious vision that not one individual could really solve that themselves. There's so many different facets to starting a business, and especially something in this emerging market, something that isn't possible yet at that time. So I kind of realized that I needed help, and that's when I sought that help. And at the university there was help, and in family there was help, mostly, and in friends there was help. And I kind of created a network, which was really hard to do, actually, because as an engineer, you tend to think that you can solve everything yourself, and you're quite sometimes closed-minded. So it was a real wake-up call at the start to realize that in some respects, I'm actually quite insignificant, and that I really need to start relying on others, which was a kind of a general life lesson, to be honest, coming out from being an engineer into more of an entrepreneur.
Insignificant is a great word, because General Ford said that he was the most insignificant person in his business. Alan Sugar is a bit more blunt, and he said, I'm the thickest man in my team. So yeah. I completely get that. So networks are important, and I think that our viewers and listeners today, one of the takeaways from today already is that you think that networks are important. So in terms of networks, you said about family, you said about actually the university. So you did a degree here in Birmingham?
It was in Coventry.
It was in Coventry.
Yeah, and that was in aerospace engineering. But at the university, there was a facility called the Enterprise Hub. And I'd only figured out that it was there at the end of my degree. I didn't know it was there for the whole 4 years I was there. But just by chance, I guess, I stumbled across it. And I met an amazing woman called Donna Preece. Donna Priest at the time. And she kind of, took my hand and guided me down this entrepreneurial path and gave me some really fundamental skills for starting a business. And she did that for kind of the first 2 years, which is arguably the hardest point of starting a business, especially when you're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights and you don't really know what you're doing or what you need to do or the direction you need to take. Donna and the rest of the team at the Enterprise Hub were absolutely fantastic.
Wow. And there lies more advice and information for people out there that it doesn't have to be a journey alone. There are skilled people who are put on this earth to help you in a position. Frank Dick, athletics coach who is very well regarded, very famous, said mountain people and valley people, and we interchange. And I think that back then, you were in a valley staring at a mountain thinking, I've got a big mountain to climb. Who do I get to help me? And so it's fantastic that you're saying that, because actually we're in the Steam House today. It's Birmingham University, Birmingham City University, that have created this amazing legacy because people who have been on those courses. It's unfortunate that you found it after 4 years, but the good news is that you found it, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, but I was kind of on my own journey before that anyway.
Okay.
The aspiration right at the start when I went to uni was to be in the RAF actually as an officer.
Wow.
And I'd gone through failure in that path previously. I tried to get into officer selection when I was 15. I failed to try and get to Welbeck Sixth Form College. So I went on anyway to do my Sixth Form A levels, and that got me into university. And I structured everything to be an engineering officer in the RAF. But then I went into the Air Squadron at Birmingham for my first year of university, and I pretty much found out I don't like being told what to do. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me right from the start, and that's when I had to pivot. And during university, there was a little bit of a feeling of being a bit lost, to be honest, and I went into a bit of a depression. But from the other side of that, I kind of woke up thinking, well, I kind of need to just go out and try things now. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least I know that it doesn't work. Otherwise, I'm constantly going to be thinking, could that have worked? Or, I'm going to stick to this path of being unhappy. So I got a placement at Triumph Motorcycles as a quality engineer because I thought maybe an engineering career could be one for me. It turned out it wasn't. Absolutely fantastic lessons learned there because it taught me how to work. In some respects, it's quite an old-fashioned place to work. It's very, not regimented, but strict. And it's got a fantastic work ethic. And I learned a heck of a lot from that. But also what I learned was I don't like being siloed at a desk doing one job.
Okay.
I like to innovate. I like to do things that haven't been done before. And I couldn't really do that to my full capability in that job. So I decided not to carry that on after university. And that came into my third year where I started trying everything, to be honest. I did loads of different societies and clubs and just started testing the waters. And that's where I found the Army Key Challenge. I did that and the idea for Skyfarer came from. So it wasn't as straightforward as I had an idea and I ran with it. There was a lot of sort of, I guess, life lessons before that led me to believe that this is a definite path for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So why Skyfarer? Is there a reasoning and rationale behind that? The name?
The name. No, to be honest. That was some time ago that we came up with that.
And you say we?
Yeah, so at the start, I was right from the start, I was kind of drumming around the idea of the business of using drones for medical delivery with a few friends and a few colleagues. And
why medical delivery?
So I think what I'd learned during the depression and during the outset of that was I wanted to do something that would be fulfilling, because in all honesty, making motorbikes is great, but there was no element of fulfillment there. It's like, I'm not going to work to make society better.
Okay.
And I realized that's
just a product.
Yeah, it's just a product. There's no kind of meaning to it. I'm sure there is to some people, but to me,
of course,
there wasn't. And that's where I had to kind of go on this deep dive as to what would be fulfilling. How can I use these skills that I've learned at university and this network that I've built to create something that could be beneficial to society? And my brother's in medicine. My mum is in the NHS for her whole life. There's a lot of sort of medical talk in the family. And I guess that kind of influenced me to potentially look at how do we build technology or use aerospace engineering to potentially save lives. And then I started to dive into organ transplants and how many people on the waiting list. How hard would that be to move organs around the UK? What sort of tech would you need? And the idea kind of formed around organ distribution at the time, which then molded into what it is today through various different paths. But the end vision, the end goal has always been the same, even though that path has been quite jagged over the past 5 years.
So the vision's the same.
Yeah.
The objective is the same.
Yeah.
To take us through the naming of the company and then starting, what was that like?
I would say the naming of the company was right early doors, and it was an exciting time because we didn't really know what we were doing. I definitely didn't. And we thought, this is really innovative. No one's done this before. We think it's possible now because we're super ambitious, and it's just an exciting thing to do. So we're in the sky, we're traveling through the sky. Skyfarer, we're faring through the sky. I think that's where the idea for the name came from, which seemed quite simple and it looked good as a word. So we kind of ran with that. And at that point, we started to look at what would this look like as a brand. And we spoke to the Coventry University, and we had a set of graphics design students work on the brand as part of their course, as part of their second year coursework or sort of project that they had to work on. And that's when the first edition of the brand came out, which holds a lot of memories for me. We've since revised it as we've kind of grown as a company.
And evolved.
And evolved, yeah, that's a good word. But I think I kind of learned early on that brand is such a key thing to any business. Yep. It's how people remember you. It's how people see you without you even speaking. So right from the start, that was a good lesson, and that was a good thing that we did. And then, to be honest, the first couple of years was quite jagged. It was quite slow in some respects. I went on to do a master's at Cranfield University in Astronautics and Space Engineering. I wasn't quite ready to let go of that engineering passion that I had. Yep. So at the same time as that, I was traveling back to Coventry every week to do what was called the Evolve program, which is sort of entrepreneurial training by Donna that I mentioned earlier at the Enterprise Hub in Coventry, which gave me some lessons. I also started to do Toastmasters at Cranfield as well to learn how to speak, because I've always been a very introverted, shy engineer, so the typical engineer. So I knew right from the start that if I'm going to go into entrepreneurship and represent a company and lead a team, I have to know how to speak to people and speak to groups of people and hopefully drive them and motivate them to do some awesome work.
Can I just focus on that for 2 seconds?
Yeah, sure.
So you did the Toastmasters. Can you explain what that is? Because there'll be people out there that haven't got a clue what that means.
So Toastmasters is a society for public speaking, essentially. So there's various programs where you can get a mentor and you can train on public speaking and the different facets of public speaking and body language and tone of voice and how you speak in general. And the biggest thing for me was actually not being forced, but given the opportunity to get in front of a group of people and just talk, because even that from the start was unbelievably difficult for me. It's almost like I just forgot how to breathe once I get up in front of people. But without giving that sort of impetus to go up and do it, I don't think even the business would be where it is today, because the sheer fact that I can speak to people and speak to groups of people and get them on board and motivate them is, I would say, quite a big reason as to why we've got to where we are today, without being selfish in any way. because that's what drives a team and that's what drives visions and goals. So right from the start, fundamental lesson is speaking to people, get out of your comfort zone, go out and try it, fail, just break down, do whatever you need to do. You will learn from that and you will get better at it.
But it's what you're saying, what I can take away, it's a massive takeaway. What you're saying is absolutely essential to the growth of you and the business by you being able to eloquently speak so that people can understand you.
Yeah, and I'm by no stretch of the imagination that I'm a pro at it. I'm still learning, but it got me on the journey and it really helped me out at the start when I was pitching for investment, for example.
Sure.
And we got through an investment round last year. And that's down to those skills that I'd learned during Toastmasters and during university as well.
Wow. Amazing. So I'd like to go then to the next level, if you don't mind, in terms of, so at this point, the name of the company, you've spoken to a mentor, you've got some Toastmaster training in terms of speaking in front of people. Is there a paid client yet on the horizon?
So for a long time, we were grant funded and private equity funded up to this year, actually.
So what was that funding for then? What were you investing that money in order for the future?
So the first bit of grant funding we got was actually to make our own drone. It wasn't a lot. It was a proof of concept.
To manufacture?
This is a big word, manufacture, but
isn't it?
make an MVP of sorts anyway. Minimum viable product of a drone.
Okay.
And that was off the back of what I designed and researched in my undergrad, was what we call a blended wing body. It's essentially turning a standard fixed wing aircraft with blends from the body to the wing to improve aerodynamic efficiency and increase internal volume. So then you've got more space, more volume to hold things like organs. And that was the whole idea behind it. And then looking into how do we make that possible to take off vertically, but then switch to a horizontal cruise. So it's super efficient, but it can land anywhere. And that was the aircraft that we designed. Or I'd started the design, and then we got some team members to come in and help carry that forward and built the proof of concept with a small proof of concept grant from Coventry University Enterprises.
Is that something like a Harrier?
Yes, but no jets. It's all electric propulsion. But essentially, yeah, it does what the Harrier does. It takes off vertically and it flies horizontally. And we built that, and it went well. But during that period, we're still learning about the market, and we'd actually found that more technology providers were coming out of the woodwork. Around the world, there are quite a few now drone manufacturers that have some absolutely fantastic technology, but no one knows how to use it. No one knows how to use this amazing tech at scale to benefit society that is commercially feasible. So that was then the gap that we shot for. And that was quite early doors. That was probably around 2018, 2019 that we did that pivot.
So you're in this position. You're looking at the market.
Yeah.
You're assessing the market. And what you're saying is you're now looking at your SWOT analysis, and actually it's international business that you're potentially going to be competing with.
Yeah. No, there's the thing is what we're doing.
Is that not quite daunting?
It was at first, I've got to admit. But what we're doing is not geographically bound. If we can do it in the UK, we can do it anywhere. This is one of the hardest places to do what we're trying to do.
Because of regulation? Because
of regulation, we're on an island, and it's quite dense in some ways. I've got a lot of heritage within aviation as well, so it's quite hard to make change. But that is happening. In some other parts of the world, regulation's already set, or there's far less regulation that you can do a lot of things already without having to seek authorizations that don't yet exist, which is what we've really been trying to do in the UK.
Wow. Okay, so you're at that position, you've done all this, the research there, you've looked at the market, seen competitors, they don't know how to use tech. What happens next?
At that point, we go for Africa, actually. So I start to build up.
Just that little place.
Yeah, just that little area of the world. we start to build up. I started to build up contacts in Africa, many different nations. I was kind of speaking to.
How did you do that?
Local contacts.
Because that sounds very simple, but it's not simple at all.
It's a difficult question to answer because I'm a bit like a dog with a bone when it comes to a challenge like that, and I just attack it and from every single possible angle that I can imagine. And there was even some friends on my university course that I knew lived now in Africa, in some countries in Africa. So I started to speak to them and see if they would want to work with us and be part of the team, and how can we bring this to Africa? What are the challenges in your country? And then kind of from there, you start to build out your network, and they introduce you to more people. Those people introduce you to other people, and eventually you get through to the right person. But there's an element of tenacity that you need to sometimes get some rejection and sometimes say, no, I don't want this. And sometimes people say, this is great, but I'm not the person. This is the person. And yeah, eventually you get through to the right person. And we did. An organisation called Riders for Health International.
Rise for Health.
Riders for Health.
Or Riders.
So they predominantly use motorcycles, some off-road vehicles to distribute medicine and samples, and sometimes nurses across the country. 6 different countries, I believe, they operate in Africa. And it was actually founded by a UK couple quite some time ago. And it's a charity organisation. And one that we'd focused on was in the Gambia, which is quite a small country surrounded by Senegal. And we had set to go to the Gambia and do some trials and do some flying and build up a use case of humanitarian aid. But then COVID hit us and we couldn't travel.
Wow.
So there lies the second pivot of the company, which was kind of forced on us. And focus on a UK market.
So you were just about to go travel, or were you already in there doing some testing? Had you already?
We were planning traveling for the year to follow, which was
so the whole plan.
Yeah.
For 2021.
Yeah.
Was to get out there and see these people.
Exactly right.
And then the pandemic hit.
That's it.
2020. That was 2020, wasn't it? March 2020 was the pandemic. So what happened? Because I think I might have been devastated that my plans have just gone up in smoke.
Luckily we had a redundancy, which is another lesson that I would promote to anyone, is to always have a backup.
A redundancy? What do you mean by that?
If one route fails, you've got a backup that will take up
plan
its
B.
place. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe some engineering speak there.
Sure.
And we applied for an Innovate UK grant fund at that time, which is about 50k. 100% match funded, and we got that. We were successful in it. It was very, very thin chances of getting it, which was a really big win, a really big motivator for us, that Innovate UK would invest in us to build this idea.
Was that based on a business plan that you put forward?
Essentially, yeah, it was an application, and it kind of got spun into a COVID-19 call at that point.
Okay.
So we did that, and that was kind of a feasibility study. It's looking at how can drones benefit healthcare in the UK. And then it was a focus on how can we benefit with the outset of COVID, and that was a 6-month project starting in July 2020, and it was successful. We did a demonstration at the end. We submitted this feasibility study, and within that, we'd also planned out what are the next steps to implementing drones in society for medical delivery. And we submitted that again to another grant fund, to UKRI, and we were successful in that.
Wow. So
straight at the end of that Innovate UK project, we started the next project, which was actually the follow-on from that project. And that's when we started to get permissions, we started to grow the team, we started to do things that no one's really done before in the UK, and we started to become credible. And you know, from there, it really started to grow as a business, and it was starting to transition from an idea and a bit of a hobby to this is becoming real now. And at that point, I still wasn't working full time. I'd hired guys to come on full time to go and to do the project and implement it, but I was working essentially 2 full-time jobs. I was working at the Manufacturing Technology Centre as a project coordinator at Aerospace Defence and Security.
Wow.
I did that for 2 years, which is a catapult centre. I was also managing this project and this young early team as well.
So you threw that in as a curveball to me, because everything up to now, I'm thinking you're 100% into this, and actually you've got 2 jobs going on.
Yeah. No, for me, the priority was to get this off the ground, pardon the pun, but to actually make some progress and get us to a point where we've got tangible value as a business. And I felt that I could really do that by working a bit harder and not getting paid, but paying people to actually do some of the grafting in the business.
So when that pandemic hit then, were you able to then, because of the pandemic, focus 100% on the business Skyfarer?
No, I still had my...
You still had your work to do?
I still had my other work to do, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so how long into the pandemic was it when things started to change?
So I came on full-time in the business January 2021.
Okay. 10 months after the pandemic hit.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's still massive challenges around the world.
Huge. Yeah. It was
So
difficult.
what did coming onto the business look like? How did your world change in terms of, now I'm full-time in this, and now we need to drive this forward? I need to get customers. I need to get people to pay for this service. And I'm guessing you need to get regulation sorted out because of one of the major obstacles.
Actually, the first thing for me wasn't to get revenue. I think the most important thing for me was to build up rapport with those that could potentially provide revenue to the company in the future. Okay. So it would be to validate that end user relationship. Okay. And to do that from the start for something that's never been done before is pretty risky, especially for people like the NHS to get involved with. You can't be asking them for money at the same time. Well, that's what I thought at the time anyway. I thought that would de-risk the adoption of what we're trying to do. And we managed to build up a relationship with University Hospital Coventry and Warwickshire Trust, which is a trust of 2 hospitals, one in Walsgrave and Coventry and one in Rugby, Hospital St Cross. And we built up that relationship for quite some time. And it's now amalgamated and formed into this sort of flagship trust for adoption of drones with the NHS. And right now, as I'm speaking, we are trialling medical delivery between those 2 hospitals.
And how long has that been going on for?
That started on the 15th of October, but the lead up to planning for that has been about 2 years.
Wow.
Which has been regulatory challenges. We've had a lot of back and forth. There's been a lot of pushback. There's been some funding challenges. There's been some team challenges. There's all sorts of challenges to get to this point.
I bet there is.
But that vision that I had 5 years ago is finally happening now.
It's alive and kicking, and it's actually coming to fruition.
Yes. Yeah.
So I know 12,900 people out there, and more that will be coming on, will be thinking this, because we've all done it, all of the team. The sky full of drones.
It's just not going to happen.
Okay.
The thing is, airspace is so regulated.
Okay.
It's very hard to do anything without permission, and it's a de-risker essentially. Aviation is all about managing risk, because if you don't, things can get messy very quickly. So there's strict, I guess, protocol and processes that you have to follow to be able to fly in airspace that is managed, or what we call segregated airspace, or airspace that isn't managed, or non-segregated airspace, which is generally quite low. And it's that low bit that we're trying to fly in.
When you say low, what does that mean to people?
So the standard ceiling for flying a drone, if anyone goes out and gets a drone, is about 400 feet AGL, above ground level.
Okay.
And we don't really want to exceed that too much, to be honest. You won't see many aircraft going below 500 feet above ground level.
Okay, so there are sections in airspace.
In a way, yeah, for sure. And there's also bubbles as well. So you have airport zones or aerodromes. They have bubbles around them where it's restricted or it's segregated.
Rightly so, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That's for safety.
Sure.
They need to control their airspace. But then in between those airports, over a lot of the area in the UK, it's Class G airspace or non-segregated airspace, and you have visual rules or visual flight rules for avoiding other aircraft. But generally, they don't go below 500 feet. unless they're for the emergency services, for example, or some other sort of use cases. And now it's our challenge, and with our consortium, is to figure out how do we fly safely in low-level airspace and avoid other aircraft or air obstacles. It could be flocks of birds, for example. And exactly. And it's all about managing air risk. It's about managing ground risk as well, which would be that example, buildings and cranes and things like that.
Okay, if something's from the ground up, it's a ground risk.
We'd classify that as a ground risk.
Bird is an air risk.
Is an air risk.
Okay.
Yeah, and with a project we're a part of called Skyway, which is a Future Flight Challenge Innovate UK backed project. It's a flagship project for the Future Flight Challenge called Skyway, led by a company called Altitude Angel, that are a unmanned traffic management system provider, and also have this fantastic detect and avoid technology. So it's a means for us as operators to understand what's in the sky and avoid it before it becomes a problem. And at that point, we're starting to look at real routine drone operations over longer ranges, and that's our focus at the moment, is supporting that project to ensure that we can do that operation with this technology.
Is there a real difference between life-saving, life-enhancing journeys of a drone versus commercial Amazon packages, for example? Because that's the one that people keep talking about.
Yes, there is a difference. We, at the moment, aren't focusing on what we would call the last mile, which is kind of what Amazon would focus on, or
the last mile.
The last mile of delivery. So this would be to your house, really. Okay. A van shows up at your house, knocks on your door, and gives you a parcel.
Okay, yeah, get that.
But I don't believe that end delivery element has been solved yet.
Okay.
Beyond that, we, at the moment, cannot fly over populated areas. And there's certain, ideas in the space of regulation, and I've got my own ideas as to how we can solve that. It will happen. It just won't happen for a few years, maybe five to 10 years, maybe. So we have to focus on something that we can do now or near term. And for us, that's what we call the middle mile. That's going from a centralized point, predominantly over rural areas, to deliver to a spoke, which could be on the outskirts of a city, a town, a village, in a hub and spoke model.
And if it's not there yet, they'll build it to make it happen.
Exactly. And that's our paradigm of thinking, is centralizing drone operations so that, say the NHS wants drones for delivery, they don't have to go out and buy a drone. They don't have to go and sort out how they integrate with all these different bits of technology and get regulatory approval, train a team. Yeah. It's a service that we would provide. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing through our work with the NHS, that trust, as a path for them to take to adopt drones. And to make it effective, we believe that we need a central hub, which has many different drones, and a team that would essentially dispatch a drone when it's required for medical delivery. But then also, that can be used for other use cases as well, which we're looking into now. Okay. It can be used for emergency service support. So if there's been a road traffic collision on the M6, how do we get eyes on that as quickly as possible to assess the scene, to make sure the right amount of assets go to that scene? Because at the moment, there's often a lot of ambulances, a lot of fire engines, police cars for something that is potentially quite minor. So we're overcautious at the moment because we don't fully understand that scene. But that drone, going as quickly as possible, automated, could provide that situational awareness that the emergency services need. There's also inspection, so there's thousands of kilometres of grids, highways, rail that always need inspection. There's always things that need maintaining and checking. Rather than getting a guy to rock up and get a drone up in the sky where he is, just dispatch it from a central point, and it will fly along the route of the grid, highway or the rail, do the inspection, send the data. It's as simple as that. It's automated, it's routine, and it's feasible in the near term. And that's what we're looking at now. We're looking at diversifying this hub, and our focus is building the hub and operating the hub. So how do we ensure that we go from order or request to delivery or fulfillment as quickly as possible every time? And that's what we're looking at building now. And it kind of boils down to software.
Okay. So what's the future look like for Skyfarer and you as the owner of this business?
So I think first off, we've got to a point now where we're on a teetering edge of commercialization for Skyfarer and the industry. So we've made our first major revenue. We've been backed in that sort of a service agreement with Medical Logistics UK, a super innovative ground-based courier that's looking at drones adoption for medical delivery. And they're the ones that are making this trial happen.
So they're effectively your client?
Yes. They're the ones that are making this happen. This trial happened now in the West Midlands, which is going to go on to the 12th of January. From that point, we are part of the Skyway project, which is a 260-kilometre ambition to create a highway in the sky for drone operations. And there's some really exciting things coming out of that project in the next 2 years that I'd love to talk about now, but I can't go into too much detail.
Sure.
But definitely watch this space, because that's going to open up a new service capability with drones in the UK, and I feel like Skyfarer is going to be right at the front of that. And from a regulatory perspective, we are now at a point where more people have set foot on the moon than achieve the regulatory milestones that we have to date. So we've got some fantastic momentum to completely blow it out of the water and push this, in a way, revolution of drone services and logistics and aerial support into the next century within the next couple of years. And it's a super exciting position to be in, but we definitely don't want to stop in the UK. We are still pushing for an African humanitarian operation. That's why I started it. That's where my heart is, and I want that to happen. We're also looking at other nations in the world that have got real demand and requirement for this service. But it's happening now in the UK. And I'd expect by 2024, it's a key inflection point within this market. We should be seeing routine delivery of medical supplies for the NHS.
But as we said earlier,
yeah,
we are not seeing the skies laden with drones.
No, it's always going to be managed. It's always going to be regulated. And that's what we're pushing for. It needs to be, because that's what makes it safe. We love these blue skies as aviators. Yeah, sure. We don't want that to disappear.
Sure.
We want drones to be used in services to benefit society, not provide any negative public perception in that. But to be honest, the public's been so supportive, yeah. And this is probably the main message that I want to share with everyone is don't just think about it. Thinking is good, but it only gets you so far. You need to go out and do it. Just go and do it, because that's a reputation that we've kind of got now, I think, is we are doers. We get things done. We don't just sit around. We're pushing the boundaries. And that's an exciting space to be. So just go out and do.
Brilliant. Elliot Parnham from Skyfarer, the founder of Skyfarer. Remember that name, because this guy has so many different areas of wisdom that you've delivered today, not just about drones, but in business. The things that you've offered today that can be passed on to our viewers and listeners are just incredible. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your journey to where you are today. I can't wait for the next chapter of what that brings. I bet you can't, of course.
Definitely. No, thanks for having me. It's been amazing.
I'm lost for words. Until next time, viewers and listeners,